The Life of George Washington Carver by Miss Oaks' second grade class. George Washington Carver was born in Missouri in 1860. More than 100 years ago, it was a terrible time.
Mean men rode silently in the night, kidnapping slaves from their owners and harming those who tried to stop them. One night, a band of these men rode up to the farm of Moses Carver, who owned George and his mother Mary.
Everyone ran in fear, but before his mother Mary could hide him, the men came and snatched them both and rode away into the night.
Moses Carver sent a man to look for them. Mary was never found.
But in a few days the man returned with a small bundle wrapped in a coat and tied to the back of his saddle. It was George.
Moses and his wife Susan cared for Mary's children. George remained small and weak.
But as George grew, they saw that he was an unusual child. He wanted to know about everything around him. He asked about the rain, the flowers, and the insects.
He asked questions the Carvers couldn't answer. When he was very young, he kept a garden where he would spend hours each day caring for plants. If they weren't growing, he found out why.
Soon the plants were healthy and blooming. In the winter, he covered his plants to protect them. In spring, he planted new seeds.
He looked after each plant and thought it was the only one in my garden. Neighbors began to ask my advice about their plants, and soon they began to call him the plant doctor.
As time went on, George wondered about more and more things. He wanted to learn and yearned to go to school.
In the meantime, the slaves had been freed, but schools nearby were not open to blacks.
So when he was 10, he left my brother, his garden, and the Carver farm, and went off to find the answers to my question.
Wherever George Washington Carver found schools, he stayed. He worked for people to earn his keep.
He scrubbed their floors, he washed their clothes, and baked their bread. Whatever George did, he did well. Even the smallest chore was important to him. Some people took George in as their son.
First he stayed with Mariah and Nanny Watkins, who were like parents to him. Then he moved to Kansas and lived with Aunt Lucy and Uncle Seymour, who they too loved this quiet boy who was so willing to help.
He worked hard for many years, always trying to save enough money for college. Other boys who had parents to help them were able to enter college much sooner than George.
At college, George continued to work. He opened a laundry where he washed my schoolmates' clothes.
And he continued to learn. His teachers and friends soon realized that this earnest young man was bursting with talent. George played at the piano, sang beautiful, and was an outstanding painter.
In fact, for a time, he thought of becoming an artist, but the more he thought of what he wanted to do, more he wanted to help his people. It was at this time he remembered that his neighbors used to call him the plant doctor.
He had never forgotten his love for plants. In all the years he had wandered, he always had something growing in his room. So George Washington Carver chose to study agriculture.
He learned about plants, flowers, and soil. He learned the names of the weeds, even they were important to him.
He still asked questions. If no person or book could answer them, he found the answers himself.
He experimented with his own plants and found secrets no one else knew.
When he finished college, he began to teach. He was asked to go to Alabama, where a college for blacks needed his talent.
It was there in Tuskegee Institute that George Washington Carver made his life.
In Alabama, Professor Carver taught his students and the poor black farmers who earned their livelihood from the soil.
He taught them how to make their crops grow better.
Most of the farmers raised cotton, but sometimes the crops were destroyed by rain or insects, and farmers couldn't earn enough to eat.
Professor Carver told them to plant other things as well.
Sweet potatoes and peanuts were good crops.
He said that raising only cotton on the soil. It was better if different crops were planted each year. The farmer did not want to listen. They were afraid to plant peanuts and sweet potatoes. They were sure that no one will buy them. But Professor Carver had experimented in his laboratory. He had found that many things could be made from the sweet potato. He made soap, coffee, and starch.
He made more than 100 things from the sweet potato.
And even though people in those days called peanuts monkey food, Professor Carver said they were good for people too.
Besides, he found that still more things could be made from the peanut. Paper, ink, shaving cream, sauces, linoleum, shampoo, and even milk. In fact, he made 300 different products from the peanut.
Once, when important guests were expected at Tuskegee, Dr. Carver chose the menu.
The guests sat around the table and enjoyed a meal of soup, cream mock chicken, bread, salad, coffee, candy, and cake. Imagine their surprise when they learned that the meal was made entirely from peanuts.
Slowly, the farmers listened to George Washington Carver. They planted peanuts and sweet potatoes. Before they knew it, these became one of the two most important crops in Alabama.
Every day his mailbox bulged with letters from farmers and scientists who wanted his advice.
He was offered great sums of money, which he turned down. Money was not important to him. He didn't even bother to cash many of the checks he received. Throughout his life, George Washington Carver asked nothing of others. He sought only to help.
He lived alone and tended to his own needs. He washed his clothes and patched them too. He used the soap he made and ate the food he grew.
Dr. Carver was asked to speak in many parts of the world, but he did not leave Tuskegee often.
He had things to do. He continued to paint. He wrote in my greenhouse and in his laboratory.
Well, he discovered many things.
He discovered the dyes could be made from plants and clothes from the Alabama clay.
Even when he was over 80 and close to death, Dr. Carver kept working.
Night after night, while the rest of the town lay asleep, a light still shone in his window. The baby born with no hope for the future grew into one of the greatest scientists of his country. George Washington Carver, with his goodness and devotion, helped not only his own people, but all peoples of the world.